Hey everybody, it's Beth, and today we will be reading First Esdras 5. After this, the heads of ancestral houses were chosen to go up, according to their tribes, with their wives and their sons and daughters, and their male and female servants, and their livestock. And Darius sent with them 1,000 cavalry to take them back to Jerusalem in safety, with the music of drums and flutes. And all their kindred were making merry. And he made them go up with them. These are the names of the men who went up according to their ancestral houses in the tribes over their groups. The priests and descendants of Phinehas, son of Aaron, Jeshua, son of Jozadak, son of Sariah, and Joachim, son of Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, of the house of David, of the lineage of Phares, of the tribe of Judah, who spoke wise words before King Darius of the Persians, in the 2nd year of his reign, in the month of Nisan, the 1st month. These are the Judeans who came up out of their sojourn in exile, whom King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon had carried away to Babylon, and who returned to Jerusalem and the rest of Judea, each to his own town. They came with Zerubbabel and Jeshua, Nehemiah, Sariah, Resasiah, Aeneas, Mordecai, Belserus, Aspharasus, Reliah, Rehum, and Bana, their leaders. The number of those of the nation and their leaders, the descendants of Parosh, 2,172. The descendants of Shephatiah, 472. The descendants of Era, 756. The descendants of Pahath Moab, the descendants of Jeshua and Joab, 2,812. The descendants of Elam, 1,254. The descendants of Zatu, 945. The descendants of Chorby, 705. The descendants of Bani, 648. The descendants of Bebai, 623. The descendants of Asgad, 1,322. The descendants of Adonikam, 672. The descendants of Bigbai, 2,066. The descendants of Adin, 454. The descendants of Ater, namely of Hezekiah, 92. The descendants of Kelan and Azatas, 67. The descendants of Azaru, 432. The descendants of Ananias, 101. The descendants of Aaron, the descendants of Bezai, 323. The descendants of Erishberith, 112. The descendants of Baiturus, 3,005. The descendants of Bethlomon, 123. Those from Netophah, 55. Those from Anatoth, 158. Those from Bethshemoth, 42. Those from Kiriathaim, 25. Those from Shephirah and Beeroth, 743. The Chaldeans and Amidians, 422. Those from Kirama and Geba, 621. Those from Macalon, 122. Those from Betulio, 52. The descendants of Nephish, 156. The descendants of the other Calmoelus and Ono, 725. The descendants of Jerichus, 345. The descendants of Senah, 3,330. The priests, the descendants of Jedediah, son of Jeshua, and of the descendants of Anasib, 972. The descendants of Immer, 1,052. The descendants of Pashur, 1,247. The descendants of Sharmei, 1,017. The Levites, the descendants of Jeshua and Kadmiel, and Banas and Sudias, 74. The temple singers, the descendants of Asaph, 128. The gatekeepers, the descendants of Shallum, the descendants of Ater, the descendants of Talmon, the descendants of Akub, the descendants of Hittai, the descendants of Shobai, in all 139. The temple servants, the descendants of Esau, the descendants of Hasufa, the descendants of Taboatha, the descendants of Keros, the descendants of Sua, the descendants of Padon, the descendants of Labana, the descendants of Hagaba, the descendants of Akub, the descendants of Uthai, the descendants of Kitab, the descendants of Hagab, the descendants of Subai, the descendants of Hannah, the descendants of Kathua, the descendants of Geder, the descendants of Jairus, the descendants of Disan, the descendants of Neobah, the descendants of Chezib, the descendants of Gezerah, the descendants of Uzzah, the descendants of Phinoah, the descendants of Hashra, the descendants of Bathsai, the descendants of Asna, the descendants of Mani, the descendants of Nephizim, the descendants of Akub, the descendants of Hakupah, the descendants of Asher, the descendants of Pharakim, the descendants of Bazluth, the descendants of Mahida, the descendants of Kutha, the descendants of Chara, the descendants of Barkos, the descendants of Serar, the descendants of Tema, the descendants of Neziah, the descendants of Hatipha, the descendants of Solomon's servants, the descendants of Asapithoth, the descendants of Peruda, the descendants of Jael, the descendants of Lozan, the descendants of Isdale, the descendants of Shephatiah, the descendants of Agiah, the descendants of Pokereth Hazabim, the descendants of Serathi, the descendants of Masia, the descendants of Gas, the descendants of Ados, the descendants of Subas, the descendants of Aphira, the descendants of Barodis, the descendants of Shaphat, descendants of Alon, all the temple servants and the descendants of Solomon's servants were 372. The following are those who came from Telmela, and Tel Harsha, under the leadership of Cherub, Adon, and Immer. Though they could not prove their ancestral houses or lineage that they belonged to Israel, the descendants of Deliah, son of Tobiah, the descendants of Nekoda, 652. Of the priests, the following had assumed the priesthood, but were not found registered: the descendants of Habiah, the descendants of Hakoz, the descendants of Jadus, who married Agiah, one of the daughters of Barzillai, and was called by his name. When a search was made in the register and the genealogy of these men was not found, they were excluded from serving as priests. And Nehemiah and Athras told them not to share in the holy things until a high priest should appear wearing Urim and Thummim. All those of Israel, 12 or more years of age, besides male and female servants, were 42,360. Their male and female servants were 7,337. There were 245 musicians and singers. There were 435 camels and 7,036 horses, 245 mules, and 5,525 donkeys. Some of the heads of families When they came to the temple of God, that is in Jerusalem, vowed that to the best of their ability they would erect the house on its site, that they would give to the sacred treasury for the work 1,000 minas of gold, 5,000 minas of silver, and 100 priests' vestments. The priests and Levites and some of the people settled in Jerusalem and its vicinity, and the temple singers, the gatekeepers, and all Israel in their towns. When the 7th month came, the Israelites were all in their own homes. They gathered with a single purpose in the square before the first gate toward the east. Then Jeshua, son of Jozadak, with his fellow priests, and Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, with his kinsmen, took their places and prepared the altar of God of Israel, to offer burnt offerings upon it in accordance with the directions of the book of Moses, the man of God. And some joined them from the other peoples of the land, and they erected an altar in its place. For all the peoples of the land were hostile to them, and they were stronger than they. And they offered sacrifices at proper times and burnt offerings to the Lord morning and evening. They kept the festival of booths, as it is commanded in the law, and offered the proper sacrifices every day and thereafter. The regular offerings and sacrifices on Sabbaths and at new moons and at all the consecrated feasts. And all who made any vow to God began to offer sacrifices to God from the new moon of the 7th month, though the temple of God was not yet built. They gave money to the masons and to the carpenters, and food and drink, and carts to the Sidonians and the Tyrians, to bring cedar logs from Lebanon, and convey them in rafts to the harbor of Joppa, according to the decree that they had in writing from King Cyrus of the Persians. In the 2nd year after their coming to the temple of God in Jerusalem, in the 2nd month, Zerubbabel son of Shealtiel and Jeshua son of Jehozadak made a beginning, together with their kindred and the Levitical priests and all who had come back to Jerusalem from exile. And they laid the foundation of the temple of God on the new moon of the 2nd month in the 2nd year after they came to Judea and Jerusalem. They appointed the Levites, who were 20 or more years of age, to have charge of the work of the Lord. And Jeshua arose, and his sons and kindred, and his brothers Kadmiel, and the sons of Jeshua, Amadiabun, and the sons of Jodah, son of Eliadon. Oh my goodness. They appointed to the Levites who were 20 or more years of age to have charge of the work of the Lord. And Jeshua arose, and his sons and kindred, and his brother Kadmiel, and the sons of Jeshua, Amadibum, the son of Jodah, son of Eliadon, with their sons and kindred, all the Levites, pressing forward the work on the house of the Lord with single purpose. So the builders built the temple of the Lord, and the priests stood arrayed in their vestments, with musical instruments and trumpets, and the Levites, the son of Asaph, with cymbals, praising the Lord and blessing him, according to the directions of King David of Israel. They sang hymns, gave thanks to the Lord, for his goodness and his glory are forever upon all Israel. And all the people sounded trumpets and shouted with a great shout, praising the Lord for the erection of the house of the Lord. Some of the Levitical priests and heads of ancestral houses, old men who had seen the former house, came to the building of this one with outcries and loud weeping, while many came with trumpets and a joyful noise, so that the people could not hear the trumpets because of the weeping of the people. For the multitude sounded trumpets loudly, so that the sound was heard far away. And when the enemies of the tribe of Judah and Benjamin heard it, they came to find out what the sound of the trumpets meant. They learned that those who had returned from exile were building the temple of the Lord, building the temple for the Lord God of Israel. So they approached Zerubbabel and Jeshua and the heads of the ancestral houses and said to them, "We will build with you, for we obey your Lord just as you do. and we have been sacrificing to him ever since the days of King Esarhaddon of the Assyrians, who brought us here. But Zerubbabel and Josiah and the heads of the ancestral houses in Israel said to him, You have nothing to do with us in building the house for the Lord our God, for we alone will build it with the Lord God of Israel, as Cyrus, the king of Persians, has commanded us. But the peoples of the land pressed hard upon those in Judea, cutting off their supplies and hindering their building. And by plots and demagoguery and uprisings, they prevented the completion of the building as long as King Cyrus lived. They were kept from building for 2 years until the reign of Darius. 21. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no more sea. I, John, saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from heaven saying, Look, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them. They shall be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. There shall be no more death. Neither shall there be any more sorrow, nor crying, nor pain, for the former things have passed away. He who is seated on the throne said, Look, I am making all things new. Then he said to me, Write, for these words are faithful and true. He said to me, It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give the spring of water of life to him who thirsts. He who overcomes shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son. But the cowardly, the unbelieving, the abominable, the murderers, the sexually immoral, the sorcerers, the idolaters, and all liars shall have their portion in the lake, which burns with fire and brimstone. This is the second death. One of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls of the 7 last plagues came to me and said, Come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. And he carried me away in spirit to a great and high mountain, and showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God, having the glory of God, her light like a most precious jewel, like a jasper, clear as crystal. It had a great high wall with 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and on the gates the names of the 12 tribes of the sons of Israel were written. 3 gates on the east, 3 gates on the north, 3 gates on the south, and 3 gates on the west. The wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them were the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. He who talked with me had a golden rod to measure the city and its gates and wall. The city lies in a square, its length as long as its width. He measured the city with the rod 1,400 miles. Its length and breadth and height are equal. He then measured its wall, 200 feet by the measurement of a man, that is, of an angel. The wall was built of jasper, and the city was pure gold, as clear as glass. The foundations of the wall of the city were decorated with all kinds of precious jewels. The first foundation was jasper, the second, sapphire, the third, chalcedony, the fourth, emerald, the fifth, sardonyx, the sixth, sardis, the seventh, chrysolite, the eighth, beryl, the ninth, topaz, the 10th, chrysoprase, the 11th, jacinth, the 12th, amethyst. The 12 gates were 12 pearls, each of the gates made of a single pearl, and the street of the city was pure gold, as transparent as glass. I saw no temple in the city, for the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. The city has no need of sun or moon to shine in it, for the glory of God is its light, and its lamp is the Lamb. And the nations of those who are saved shall walk in its light, and the kings of the earth shall bring their glory and honor into it. Its gates shall never be shut by day, for there shall be no night there. They shall bring into the glory and the honor of the nations. No unclean thing shall ever enter it, nor shall anyone who commits abomination or falsehood, but only those whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life. Psalm 19. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Day unto day utters speech, and night unto night declares knowledge. There is no speech, and there are no words. Their voice is not heard. Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them has he set a tent for the sun, which is like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber. It rejoices as a strong man to run a race. Its going forth is from one end of the heavens, and its circuit extends to the other end. There is nothing hidden from its heat. The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. The statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, yes, than much fine gold, sweeter also than honey and the honeycomb. Moreover, by them is your servant warned, and by keeping them comes great reward. Who can understand his errors? Cleanse me from secret faults. Keep back your servant also from presumptuous sins. May they not rule over me. Then I will be upright and innocent from great transgression. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Proverbs 19. Better is the poor who walks in his integrity than he who is perverse in his lips and is a fool. Also, it is not good for the soul to be without knowledge, and he who hastens with his feet sins. The foolishness of man prevents his way. The foolishness of man perverts his way, and his heart frets against the Lord. Wealth makes many friends, but the poor is separated from his neighbor. A false witness will not be unpunished, and he who speaks lies will not escape. Many will entreat the favor of the prince, and every man is a friend to him who gives gifts. All the brothers of the poor hate him. How much more do his friends go far from him? He pursues them with words, yet they abandon him. He who gets wisdom loves his own soul. He who keeps understanding will find good. A false witness will not be unpunished, and he who speaks lies will perish. Delight is not seemly for a fool, much less for a servant to have rule over princes. The discretion of a man defers his anger, and it is his glory to pass over a transgression. The king's wrath is as the roaring of a lion, but his favor is as dew upon the grass. A foolish son is the calamity of his father, and the contentions of a wife are a continual dripping of water. House and riches are the inheritance of fathers, and a prudent wife is from the Lord. Slothfulness casts into a deep sleep, and an idle soul will suffer hunger. He who keeps the commandment keeps his own soul, but he who is careless in his ways will die. He who has pity on the poor lends to the Lord, and he will repay what he has given. Chasten your son while there is hope, and let not your soul spare for his crying. A man of great wrath will suffer punishment. For if you deliver him, yet you must do it again. Hear counsel and receive instruction, that you may be wise in your latter days. There are many plans in a man's heart. Nevertheless, the counsel of the Lord will stand. The desire of a man is his kindness, and a poor man is better than a liar. The fear of the Lord tends to life, and he who has it will abide satisfied. He will not be visited with evil. A slothful man hides his hand in his bowl, and will not so much as bring it to his mouth again. Smite a scorner, and the simple will beware, and reprove one who has understanding, and he will understand knowledge. He who mistreats his father and chases away his mother is a son who causes shame and brings reproach. Cease listening to instruction, my son, that causes you to stray from the words of knowledge. An ungodly witness scorns judgment, and the mouth of the wicked devours iniquity. Judgments are prepared for scorners, and beatings for the back of fools. Thus ends the reading for today. Never walk alone.